and welcome to the Wellness with Juanita podcast. I'm your host, Juanita Nagai, an American living in Japan for 20 years. I've gone through some massive life changes and crises in my 20 years here. At its bleakest, I felt very isolated, alone, and helpless in the face of what was happening. I relied on alcohol and cigarettes to get through it the best I knew how, which worked until it didn't, and everything fell apart. I made it through with a little help from my friends, a fledgling mindfulness practice, and learning how to become my own strongest ally. I quit drinking and smoking, worked my way through my grief, found ways to forgive, created new connections, and started a regular exercise, meditation, and self-care routine. I've also become a national board certified health and wellness coach along the way, and developed a desire and passion to help others on their own personal journeys. This podcast is all about change, growth, healing yourself, learning how to get back up after life kicks you down, and exploring mindfulness and self-compassion as incredible tools available to each and every one of us to do just that. Welcome to the Wellness with Juanita podcast. I'm your host, Juanita Nagai. And today I am joined by a special guest. Jennifer Schrappe has been a therapist for 20 years and runs Chrysalis Enterprises, a private counseling practice in Columbus, Ohio, in the United States. In addition to her work at Chrysalis, she has developed the Heal Your Money Stuff, Calm Your Life program for those who struggle with ongoing money management issues. And she is also developing a program for entrepreneurs who are in recovery from food addiction. So thank you so much for joining me today, Jennifer. It's lovely to have you.
Juanita, thanks so much for having me. It's lovely to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, as you know, I am based in Japan, and I think the majority of my listeners are probably other foreign-speaking, primarily women, also based in Japan. So I would love it if you could just give us a little bit of an introduction and maybe tell us what kind of therapy you practice and what it is that you do.
Sure. So, like I shared in my bio, I've been practicing for over 20 years at this point, and I got into it to help other people overcome the hurts and the challenges and the emotional stuff that can so often trip us up. And it's quite common that those struggles trip us up and interfere with life far longer than they need to. They have a place at the table long after they have been uninvited.
Yeah.
So my goal is to help people achieve peace and freedom and regain their sense of empowerment in order to live their lives the way that they are called to. So that was what really motivated me to get into it. Also, there, for me as a follower of Christ, there is a faith element to it, but I bring that in for those who want it. So obviously I'm not there to impose my beliefs on anyone who doesn't share my beliefs, but there are many clients who have sought me out because they're also following Christ and they want a therapist who does as well. So it depends on who's in front of me and what they're looking for and what they need help with.
Mm-hmm. Okay, wonderful. So I'm guessing then it's primarily like talk therapy and working through
Yes.
Different issues or childhood leftovers, as it were.
It usually goes back to childhood. It usually does. Yeah, it's stuff that people take in childhood when they, as children, would come to believe that things were their fault or things were their responsibility to fix or to clean up. And then those burdens can and often do continue on into adulthood. Or if there's trauma, that's a whole different situation that will often, more often than not, continue on into adulthood. So I'm especially passionate about helping people to overcome that old garbage, those old, and I say garbage not because it's cheap, but garbage because it pollutes. It hurts. It stinks things up. It is just a mess. And there's no judgment for anybody who struggles with that kind of stuff, but hey, let's recognize it and let's take it out. What I use is internal family systems. I am IFS informed, and that's mainly my go to, helping people to learn about their internal emotional system and how to, with more efficacy, with more compassion, with more empowerment, manage it well.
Yeah, that really resonates because as I go on my own personal journey and explore things like internal family systems, I think it's a beautiful modality and a really great way of thinking about all of this stuff inside of us because it really is a system with lots of different moving parts and parts that interact together and parts that are protecting other parts and all of that stuff. I heard something recently that really struck me how the things that we developed as children, oftentimes younger versions of ourselves, were coping mechanisms or things that we felt like we needed to do for survival or for safety or for love. Like all of these things that we did as children are no longer serving us as adults, but they're so ingrained in us and they are truly the way that we interact and live in the world that it's really hard to realize as adults that we do have the power to start to kind of pull them apart and to start to take out the garbage, to use your metaphor. So I think the other piece of that too is that recognizing that we all have our own baggage. Like we all have
Hmm.
our own internal conflict and system and issues and all of this stuff. And so I think that's just been a huge part of it for me too, trying to realize that it's just so inherently human to suffer in some way, in our own unique ways, but to suffer and to try and use that common humanity lens to realize that, to try and take some of the shame out of it, right?
Oh
Because
gosh, yes.
mental health and all of this, our deepest darkest hurts and secrets, it's not stuff that we talk about in polite company usually, but it's something that we all carry.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. And you mentioned those old patterns that it's so hard for us to leave behind. When we have those neural pathways because we became accustomed to thinking a certain way, feeling a certain way, acting a certain way, those neural pathways can be so well worn, so deep, so wide that they are like the flippin' Grand Canyon, and it's easy to fall into them all over again and again and again. But at the same time, it is possible to rewire the brain and to develop new neural pathways. It just takes practice and repetition and repetition and repetition.
Yeah. Yeah, yep. You're speaking my language. I think that that's where I can totally geek out to neuroplasticity and all of this amazing research that that is proving
Mhm.
now that we can change our brains and we can change the way that we think. I think for so long we've had as a society this idea that, oh, this is just the way that I am, and it breeds hopelessness and kind of accepting defeat or something, that if I'm depressed or if I'm anxious or if I feel like I'm not good enough in whatever way, that's the end of the story. But
Yeah.
actually there is an amazing ability to change the way that we literally think. But like you said, it takes practice and lots and lots and lots of practice, right? Consistent
Hmm.
repeated effort. Yeah. So that leads me into this question. What are your goals when you work with clients? And then maybe the separate question is kind of what are your clients' goals? What are they coming with? But let's start with what are your goals for when you work with a client?
Yeah. I think that with my clients, usually their goals are for life to suck less.
Yeah, which is very relatable. There's a reason people go to therapy, right? Yeah.
There's a reason they're tired of it and they want to just get better and not be so dragged down and depressed and anxious and everything, just everything. They would like to be able to sleep at night. They would just like for things to suck a lot less. They're so over it. If you're at the point where you're calling a therapist, you are so over it. So that's the sense I get from my clients when they come in. Now, what my goal is for them, and I love this so much, I love this about internal family systems, is for my clients to be, for the most part, self led. That doesn't mean selfish, doesn't mean self centered, but with IFS, the goal is to connect with your true identity inside the core of your system, which is called self. That's the true you. That's the real authentic you. So at the core of your system, Juanita, is the Juanita in self. At the core of mine is the Jennifer in self. And it's described as the compassionate leader of the system. It's designed to be the compassionate leader of the system. So it's not going to be overtaken by depression, anxiety, shame, intense self-criticism, trauma, and on and on and on. Okay, it's gonna be this state of being chill and self-confident and open and compassionate and curious. So approaching things instead of, instant freak out or instantly believing that it's just all going to fall apart. It's more like, I wonder what's happening here. Do I need to take action? Do I not? If I don't own anything in this situation, I am hands off and I'm at peace with that. Or if so and so is acting a certain way, that may actually have nothing to do with me. That person could just be having a really bad day. Or that individual who just cut me off in traffic, perhaps he or she wasn't trying to piss me off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Again,
Maybe
perhaps
it
it
just
had
happened.
nothing to do. Perhaps it had nothing to do with me. Maybe there's a woman in labor in the car. Who knows?
Right. Right.
So the goal is to effectively manage the emotional parts so that the client is consistently in self and is able to think clearly and operate in peace and have this innate knowledge of the inherent dignity, inherent worth and value, and to lead life out of that state, to be making decisions in that state, to be relating to others, to be working, to be interacting with family members, to be interacting with difficult people,
Mm-hmm.
still out of that state. So when my clients, for the most part, are living their lives in self, then we can cease doing therapy, at least for a time.
Right. And that's a beautiful goal. I love that. And the self, that's self with a capital S, right? And it embodies all those 8C word qualities of calm and confidence, curiosity, compassion. And it is this the way that I think all of us would love to be all of the
Mm,
time. And the idea is that that is possible, that we can start to give our different parts the space that they need to be acknowledged and validated and work with them so that we start to live more and more from a sense of self, right? And be more self-led, as you were saying.
that's right.
It's really interesting to me. This is just coincidence time wise and one of those synchronicities of the universe for me. But over the summer, I was actually doing something called a positive intelligence program. It was a grant for coaches. And as I started the program, I realized that it's so similar, but of course it's a different kind of packaging. But in the positive intelligence program, instead of the self with a capital S, he talks about the sage self, but it's essentially the same, right? It's it's coming from a place of grounded centeredness and knowing, and not knee jerk reacting and not assuming,
Yeah.
like you were explaining before. So it was kind of like, for me, I'm like, oh, okay, I know the sage self. This is the self with a capital S from IFS. And then he also talks about the saboteurs that get in the way, which to me, again,
Ooh.
was different parts. So we all have the judge. That is the biggest, baddest part that really trips us up and gets in the way, right? That self critical, judgmental mind. And then there's 9 or 10 other types that we all kind of gravitate to in other ways, and those are our personal, the parts that trip us up. So I just think it's really interesting. It's the same kind of idea, that we just want to be able to integrate ourselves, really, and learn how to live from this more whole, self-led place.
That's right.
And again, you are based in the United States, so this may or may not be a little different for people in my particular part of the world and situation. But I am curious, what are the kind of most common problems, or I guess presenting causes of why your clients come seek you out? I mean, you referred earlier, they just wanted to suck less, which makes sense.
That
But
may not be a clinical term.
right. But what are the kinds of things that people are coming to you with?
Anxiety, depression, and trauma.
Yeah, yeah.
Most of the time. Yeah.
It's it's the deep root childhood stuff.
Yep. And I mean, let's face it, anxiety is everywhere in this country. I mean, this is cliche, but it's in the news. It's in just about every ad. Buy this product or you're going to face this horrible consequence. And it may not be, quite that dire, but in there's, even if it's just the anxiety of the fear of missing out, that's still some maybe mild anxiety. So it's used all over the place. I'm kind of curious if it's this bad in Japan.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is why I'm curious, yeah, because we are recording this in September of 2025, and America is kind of a scary place at the moment. There's a
Oh my
lot of
goodness.
uncertainty, to say the least. I stopped myself from swearing there, but I think that, but personally,
I would not blame you.
yeah, I do think that in any country, and maybe I think in modern first world countries for different reasons, but obviously in third world countries facing famine and true deprivation, obviously there are other host of problems. But I think at this point in humanity's history and evolution or whatever, we are freaking out. Like, we are an anxious people, and for good
Mhm.
reason. I think we have a lot of things to be worried about. The fact that it is September and it's still nearly 90 every day here does not bode well for my children's future. There's a lot of stuff that's really, really scary. I think personally that's why it's even more important to figure out what is most important for each of us individually, so that we're not overwhelmed and subsumed in all of these things that we can't control and that are outside of our realm of influence and to think about, okay, so what is most important to me in my life? And what can I do within the parameters of my life and the things I can control to live more in accordance with those values, right? If we just watch the TV and read the news, go on social media, it's wherever we turn, this overwhelming anxiety and fear and uncertainty, and also just the speed and the distraction level, the information constantly coming at us, that in itself is anxiety producing. Human beings, cavemen, did not have to deal with TikTok. This is not what we have evolved to deal with yet. So, but to answer your question about Japan, I think that my hunch is that it is a different vibe than the United States. Even the example that you just used of ads on TV, I do remember being surprised every time I go home by how many prescription medication ads there are on the TV in the
Yeah.
States and the side effects and everything. And I don't think we have those in Japan. You're kind of inundated with maybe you need this, maybe you should talk to your doctor about this, but then possible side effects are also this whole host of scary things too. So we don't have that. It's not this overwhelming sense of maybe something's wrong with you in a physical or mental, biological way, I guess, if that makes sense from the kind of ads. However, I think
Yeah, the way you put that was perfect. The general message is there is something wrong with you, and we are here to tell you what it could be and how our product could fix it for you before things get worse.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's a great message.
Mm.
As a coach, my kind of like bottom line ethos is that we all hold the answers that we're seeking within. And it's my job to guide people to that place. I'm not going to tell them what's wrong with them or what to do because that's not my place. I am having the time of my life figuring it all out for myself individually. And that is what has also inspired me to do this work and to help guide others. So I think that we have enough inundation from society, from social media, from our teachers, bosses, partners, children, everyone in our life. We get enough pressure and enough doubts creeping in that we then take and then we internalize it and then we make it into our own soup of not feeling good enough for whatever reason. My goal is to try to start pulling those threads apart and trying to see more clearly that all of those thoughts might not be true and we don't have to believe them all. And so, again, what is most important to us and who are we really and how much more can we live aligned with that? That's what I'm all about. But saying all of that, what I wanted to kind of bring up though too is that in Japan, for English speaking and primarily women, I think my clientele and my audience are primarily women, we certainly have a very specific host of problems, and there is so little affordable, accessible, English speaking mental health support or even awareness in Japan. That's a whole other topic we don't have time to go into today, why that partially is. I will link to the resources that I am aware of in Japan. You know, we have an English crisis hotline that also has support to a directory of therapists, and there are online directories. You can search for therapist by area or specialty and things like that. But they are rather few and far between in the whole country for however many hundreds of thousands or millions of foreigners that live here. It's kind of slim pickings.
Yeah.
So I was curious to ask you of some practices or techniques or even starting places for people that they can begin this process of self-exploration and discovery. Maybe that will eventually lead to working with a therapist or a coach when they reach something that's kind of feels insurmountable or impassable. But how can people kind of start to make it suck less on
Sure.
their own?
Make it suck less. So I would say sit down with some paper and a pen and write down the emotions, the internal forces that you're noticing. So let's say that you're feeling anxious and irritated and stressed about something, and there's some insecurity in there, and there's like kind of a bummed out feeling in there. Right there, that's what 5 parts. So anxious, irritation, bummed out, insecure, stressed. Write those down, leave space in between them, and then go back and talk with them like you're talking to a cranky kid. Hey, what's up? And as long as there really is openness and curiosity versus I want to crush you anxiety, those parts, believe it or not, they'll talk back. It might even be kind of, audible inside, or it may just come as thoughts, as realizations, but write down what they have to say. And just that, identifying with and engaging with parts will go far in helping them to calm down, because they are so much like children. Children who are freaking out, and when you take the child and you look the child in the eyes and you say, hey, what's going on? The child usually starts to calm down and then gives you a whole laundry list. Oh, I fell and I hurt my knee, and then there was a bug, and then, this kid was laughing at me, and then a cat scratched me. I mean, yeah, I would be upset too. So when these parts tell you what they're worked up about, they will make so much more sense. And often, just again, hearing them out, empathizing with them is all they need. And then they calm down, they recede, and all of a sudden you're noticing more peace. Now, for parts that keep coming back and are running the show far too much, okay, that can be a different game, because there is likely something that could use the touch of a professional. But even then, there will still be relief most of the time by engaging with these parts, getting to know them, spending time with them. It can be a morning practice. It can happen at any time during the day. You can save it for when things are really riled up. But just getting to know your internal system through journaling it out can bring a lot of clarity, order, and relief.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Thank you for that. And just listening to you talk about that made me kind of reflect on, again, this idea that for me, mindfulness and self compassion informs, kind of underpins my work and what I do. So, this kind of turning towards, and like you said, with again, kindness and curiosity, right? We're speaking the same language, saying, like, okay, I'm here. What's up? I'm listening. I'm paying attention. What do you have to tell me? Is oftentimes all they need. Sometimes. The other thing, though, too, that struck me is that it also is creating space between the part or whatever it's protecting or whatever the trigger was that brought it up and yourself. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking of my angry part. I have a very angry, very cynical, very jaded, punk, college age me. And and because I have done a little bit of this work, I can identify it very clearly with her and with that time period of my life. And she has her purpose and she has her place. But especially anger, I think it can be a really sticky, tricky emotion for women, especially. And it helps to identify her and to be able to talk to her and to be able to internally even laugh about, okay, that's her again, right? That's Punk Overland Wani is how I think of her. And to even name her and then kind of be able to engage in dialogue with her. But it's not me. I'm not a bad person because I have so much anger or rage comes up sometimes, which I think is where I kind of was in the past. Just shove it down deep, keep a tight lid on it because I shouldn't be angry because society or my family told me to. And then also because I don't want to be angry. That's not the kind of person that I want to be. But it's gonna come up, especially if you shove it down deep. So being able to recognize that that's not all of who I am. That's not me. Not feeling overwhelmed or identified with the anger, being able to separate a little bit out and say, that's a part of me. And she also belongs. There's usually a good
Yes.
reason she's showing up.
That's right. That's exactly right.
I think that's beautiful. I have done parts work and I continue to do so, but naming them, I think, can be a really helpful and also kind of creative process as well to kind of start to get to know parts of yourself that you didn't realize were there even. And maybe they are there because they haven't been recognized, but being able to give them a place at the table, to give them a name, a nickname, for yourself can be really, really illuminating and healing, or at least a step on the way.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. A lot of times when I'm explaining parts work, I'll reference the movie Inside Out, right?
Yes.
And one distinction I will make sure to make is in true parts work, there are no bad parts. There are no parts that deserve to be villainized or kicked out or ganged up on, nothing like that. Every part, as annoying as it may be, as problematic as it may be, every part has a reason to be there, to be active. Every part has a right to be there. And the order of the day is compassion. Compassion.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up and making that distinction, because I think that is really, really important. We all have those, like Inside Out, the deep dark secret, that kind of big rock monster down in the vault in the basement. We all have even those parts, and they all belong, right? We want to recognize that there are no bad parts. Like you said, I'll throw a link to that book in the notes too, because that's a really wonderful book that explains internal family systems and how to start working with it in a lot of really great ways on your own. But the idea is anger isn't bad, nor is shame. It also deserves its place at the table. So I really love that important point that you brought up, and it really dovetails beautifully with self-compassion as well, that we honor all of our parts, we honor and recognize our suffering, and that in itself is taking the step to alleviate it, to recognizing that we all experience it. And so how can we be kind to ourselves in that moment instead of making it worse and adding on judgment or more shame or repression or whatever it is, right? That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Jennifer. I love that. So I would like to ask you, you gave us a great place to get started with writing down, journaling your emotions and trying to open up the dialogue there. I like to leave my listeners with a small takeaway at the end of each episode. What do you have for us?
There's always a reason why we do what we do and feel what we feel. There's always a reason. And the reason is not that you are crazy or stupid or so much more messed up than the rest of us. There's always a reason. And when we get curious, we will discover what's kind of jacked up with our system just then. And then the mountain will most of the time shrink down to a molehill. But there's always a reason.
So digging into trying to investigate like what the reason is, or just the knowledge that there is reason behind the behaviors that we do.
Knowledge that there's always a reason, because I'll tell you what, being firstborn and relatively guilt prone and overly taking responsibility and quite positive that most things happening around me are caused by something I did or didn't do. I still got work to do in those areas. So when things happen and I feel a certain way about it, or I react a certain way, just reminding myself that there's a reason. And the reason is not that, again, I am crazy or so much more messed up than everybody else. The reason could simply be that I'm tired and it's time to go to bed. The reason could be that I'm dehydrated and that's throwing me off. The reason could be that something somebody said earlier in the day is it kind of settled in and it's getting stuff riled up inside. And I didn't realize it until now when I'm snapping at my kid for nothing that deserves that level of response. And I'm like, whoa, what's going on there? There's always a reason. All right, let's get curious. Let's apologize to the child and let's get curious about what's happening inside. So I like to tell my clients that, because so often, Juanita, we will fall into another Grand Canyon neural pathway of, well, I've screwed this up too, just like I've screwed everything else up. So why even try?
Right.
Well, hold on. Let's think about whatever just happened that's got us off center, and remember that our reaction, there's a reason to it. And the reason is not that everything is our fault, or that we're the worst, or that we're crazy and other people are okay. There's always a reason.
Right. Remembering that the reason sometimes might have nothing to do with us. Sometimes the reason does have something to do with us, but not the reason that we think of, right? It could be that we're tired or hungry or grumpy or whatever. That's a wonderful reminder. Well, I would love to give you the opportunity to do a shameless plug at the end here. Do you have a website or social media accounts? Where can people reach out to find you if they are curious?
Say the best thing would be Instagram, Jennifer Schrappe, LPCC.
Okay, wonderful. I will put a link to that in the show notes as well so that people can find you if they would like. And
thank you.
It has been so lovely to chat with you today. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I love talking about all things self-improvement, and internal family systems is something that I really value and found a lot of benefit in myself. So thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today.
Juanita, it's been delightful to have this time with you. It's been fantastic to chat with a fellow IFS fan.
Wonderful. And as always, listeners, I love to receive any feedback on every episode. So if you have any questions, comments, please don't hesitate to reach out. Until next time, thank you so much for listening, and take care.